I don't usually post stuff like this, but I figured maybe sharing my story could help someone out there. This happened a few years ago, and honestly, it still feels unreal sometimes. Back then, I worked for Sony. Yeah, that's Sony, the kind of place everyone thinks is shiny, full of creativity, and just perfect. And for a while, I thought I was living the dream. I was in my late 20s, finally working at a company that people actually respected. My friends envied me, my parents bragged about me, and even I caught myself smiling every morning just walking into the building. But life has a funny way of showing you that not everything is what it seems. It started small, little things at work that didn't sit right with me. A missing email here, a skipped meeting invite there. At first, I thought, okay, maybe I'm just overthinking. Big company, things slip through the cracks. But then it started happening more often, like people were deliberately leaving me out. I brushed it off because, honestly, I didn't want to ruin the dream job narrative I had built up in my head. My girlfriend at the time kept telling me, "Babe, maybe you're just being sensitive. You finally made it. Don't overcomplicate things." So I swallowed it. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And trust me, I had no idea just how wrong things were about to get. So here's where things started to shift from, maybe it's in my head, to full-on reality check. One morning, I showed up at work like usual, coffee in hand, ready to start on a project I had been working on for weeks. It was something I was genuinely proud of, an idea I had pitched during a team brainstorming session. Everyone nodded, smiled, and said it was interesting, but honestly, nobody seemed too excited at the time. But when I opened my email that day, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A colleague of mine, someone I thought I was cool with, had sent out a presentation to the higher-ups. And guess what it was? My project. My exact idea. The same slides. Even the same dumb joke I had written in the notes section to lighten the mood. And his name was all over it. Not mine. I sat there staring at the screen like, no way this is happening. My heart was pounding, but I told myself, okay, maybe it's a mistake. Maybe he just forgot to include me. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt because, honestly, the alternative hurt too much. So I walked over to his desk, trying to stay calm, and asked about it. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Oh yeah, I figured you were too busy, so I just took the lead. Don't worry, you'll get credit later." That was the moment something inside me cracked. I forced a smile, walked back to my desk, and sat down, but my brain was screaming. I felt betrayed, angry, and stupid all at once. The worst part? A tiny voice in my head whispered, "This is just the beginning. They don't see you as part of the team." And unfortunately, that voice was right. After that day, I couldn't unsee things. It was like once my eyes were open, every little detail screamed betrayal. Meetings started happening without me. I'd find out later that key decisions had already been made, and my role was basically reduced to just clean up, work. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and everyone suddenly gets quiet? Yeah, that was my everyday. One afternoon, I caught two of my teammates whispering near the break room. When they noticed me, they froze, then quickly changed the topic. I laughed it off like, "Oh, you guys gossiping again?" But inside, I felt this heavy pit in my stomach. I wasn't just being paranoid anymore. I was being pushed out. The breaking point came when my manager, someone I had trusted, someone who told me early on that I had a bright future at Sony, pulled me aside. I thought, finally, maybe he's going to acknowledge what's been happening. But instead, he hit me with, "Listen, we've noticed some issues with your performance. You're not contributing as much as the others. Maybe you should think about whether this role is the right fit for you." I swear, my ears were ringing. Performance issues? My ideas were being stolen, my projects hijacked, and now suddenly I was the problem? I wanted to yell. I wanted to defend myself, tell him everything that had been happening. But the words got stuck in my throat. I just nodded like a fool, walked back to my desk, and sat there staring at my computer screen while my hands shook. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was humiliation. That night, I went home completely drained. I didn't even bother turning on the lights when I walked into my apartment. I just collapsed onto the couch and stared at the ceiling. My girlfriend noticed right away. She asked, "Rough day?" And I just laughed bitterly. I wanted to tell her everything, but when I started explaining, About the stolen project, the secret meetings, my boss's little performance talk. She frowned and said, "Maybe you're just taking it too personally. Corporate life is like that. Just keep your head down." And that broke me even more. I wasn't looking for solutions. I just wanted someone to believe me. Instead, I felt dismissed, like maybe I really was crazy. Over the next few weeks, things only got worse. I'd come home late, emotionally wrecked, and she'd barely look up from her phone. One night, I overheard her whispering to a friend on the phone, "Yeah, he's being dramatic. He thinks everyone's out to get him." That hit harder than my manager's words. I realized I wasn't just losing my job. I was losing support at home too. Every day felt like walking into a battlefield, and every night felt like I was retreating to an empty camp. The stress started showing. I couldn't sleep, my appetite tanked, and even my friends noticed I wasn't myself anymore. And then came the email. An official notice for a performance review scheduled the following week. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what that meant. The day of the performance review felt like walking into my own execution. I wore my best shirt, tried to look sharp, even rehearsed what I'd say in front of the mirror that morning. My hands were sweating the entire subway ride, and I kept telling myself, just stay calm. Be professional. Tell them the truth. When I entered the conference room, 3 people were already there: my manager, HR, and, of all people, the colleague who had stolen my project. He gave me this smug half-smile that made my blood boil. They started off polite. "We just want to go over some concerns," HR said. But then the list began: missed deadlines, lack of teamwork, poor communication. I sat there thinking, are you kidding me? That's literally everything I've been accused of because you've been cutting me out. Finally, I couldn't hold it in. I explained everything. The stolen project, the meetings I wasn't invited to, the constant exclusion. My voice was shaking, but I laid it all out. For a moment, there was silence. And then HR cleared her throat and said, "We've spoken to several team members, and their accounts don't match yours. It seems like maybe there's a misunderstanding." That word, misunderstanding, felt like a knife. And then, the bomb dropped. "Given the circumstances, we'll need to put you on a performance improvement plan. If progress isn't made, we'll have to consider termination." I walked out of that room numb. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just shut down. The system was rigged, and no matter what I did, I was the villain in their story. The worst part? My colleague patted me on the back as I left and whispered, "Tough break, man." It took everything in me not to punch him right there. The crash hit me like a train I never saw coming. For the first few days after that review, I tried to power through. I told myself, okay, fine, I'll survive this stupid improvement plan. I'll work twice as hard, prove them wrong. But it was like running in quicksand. The harder I tried, the more I sank. Emails went unanswered. My contributions in meetings were brushed off with polite nods, then ignored. And my stolen project? Yeah, it got greenlit, and my colleague was being praised left and right while I was treated like some intern who barely knew what he was doing. The weight followed me home. My girlfriend stopped asking about work altogether. Instead, she complained that I was always stressed and never fun anymore. I wanted to scream, of course I'm stressed. I'm being destroyed from the inside out. But I swallowed it. Then one night, I came home later than usual and saw her sitting on the couch, laughing into her phone. She didn't notice me right away. And when she did, her face froze for half a second before she smiled too brightly and hung up. That half second told me everything. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew she wasn't just checking in with a friend. I was already being betrayed at work, and now my own home didn't feel safe anymore. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, realizing my life was unraveling in ways I couldn't control. My dream job was crumbling, my relationship was hanging by a thread, and I felt completely alone. And then, the next morning, I got a call that pushed me even deeper into the pit. The call came at 7:30 in the morning, before I'd even had coffee. My phone buzzed, and when I saw the name on the screen, my stomach dropped. It was my manager. I picked up, trying to sound alert, but my voice was still groggy. He didn't waste time with small talk. "We need you in the office early today. There's been a development." I dragged myself out of bed, threw on a shirt, and got on the train half asleep, my mind racing. What now? Are they firing me already? When I walked into the office, I noticed something weird. People were staring at me. Not the usual avoidant glances, but direct stares, like I had grown a second head. A few whispered as I passed. My chest tightened. My manager pulled me into a small meeting room with HR again. This time, the atmosphere was different, colder, heavier. They slid a printed email across the table. "We received this from your account last night," HR said. I looked down, and my blood ran cold. The email was aggressive, filled with insults about the company and my team, and it ended with, "I quit before you can fire me." The thing is, I hadn't written it. I stammered, "This isn't me. I didn't send this. Check the metadata. Check the login." But they just looked at me like I was lying to save face. Someone had used my account. Someone wanted me gone, and they were good at it. The final blow? HR said, "Given the circumstances, we're suspending you while we investigate. Clear out your desk." I walked out of that building in a daze, carrying a cardboard box with my things. While the same colleague who stole my project watched from the hallway with a smirk he didn't even bother to hide. At that moment, I realized I wasn't just being pushed out. I was being erased. Walking out of Sony that day felt like walking out of my own identity. For years, I had tied so much of who I was to that job. I work at Sony was my badge of honor. Now I was just a guy with a cardboard box, carrying a plant I didn't even like and a few notebooks that suddenly meant nothing. I got home and set the box down in the corner. My girlfriend barely looked up from her phone when I told her. She just sighed and said, "Well, maybe it's for the best. You were miserable there anyway." I wanted comfort, maybe even a hug. Instead, I got indifference. And that hurt worse than the suspension. The days that followed were brutal. I kept replaying everything in my head. The stolen project, the fake email, the smirk on that guy's face. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed with messages from colleagues, but I didn't answer. Part of me didn't want to know what they were saying, and another part was terrified it was all pity. The real kicker came 3 nights later. I walked into the living room and found my girlfriend laughing again, this time on a video call. But it wasn't just a friend. It was the same colleague who had stabbed me in the back at work. My chest went hollow. Betrayal at work was one thing, but betrayal at home, by both of them, was a punch straight to the gut. I didn't say a word. I just turned around, walked into the bedroom, and shut the door. That night, I stared at the ceiling again, realizing I had nothing left to lose. Not the job, not the relationship, not the respect I thought I had earned. Everything was gone. Or maybe it was a chance to finally start over. The next morning, I woke up with my heart pounding, still replaying that image of my girlfriend laughing with him on the screen. For a few minutes, I just sat there on the edge of the bed, debating, do I confront her? Do I explode? Or do I just pack my stuff and disappear? When she finally woke up and wandered into the kitchen, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I asked, "So, how long has it been going on?" She froze, her hand hovering over the coffee machine. "What are you talking about?" she said, trying too hard to sound casual. I laughed, a bitter, ugly laugh. "Don't play dumb. I saw you on video with him. My colleague. The same guy who stole my project and got me suspended." For a moment, the mask slipped. Her face hardened, and she said, "You're overreacting. We're just friends. You're paranoid." That word again, paranoid. The same one she had whispered to her friend weeks before. Something in me snapped. I told her straight, "No, I'm not paranoid. I've been betrayed at work, and now I'm being betrayed at home. You chose the wrong side." She didn't apologize. She didn't even deny it anymore. She just muttered, "Maybe you're not the guy I thought you were." That was it. I grabbed a duffel bag, stuffed it with clothes, and walked out. No big goodbye, no second chances. Just gone. As I stood on the street with my bag, the reality sank in. I had no job, no girlfriend, no plan. But for the first time in weeks, I also felt strangely free. I didn't know what was next, but I knew I wasn't going back. Walking away was the hardest and easiest decision I've ever made. Hard because I had just detonated my entire life in one day: job, home, relationship. Easy because staying would have killed me slowly. I checked into a cheap motel that night. The kind with flickering neon lights and paper-thin walls where you can hear your neighbor's TV through the plaster. I lay on that stiff mattress staring at the water-stained ceiling, thinking, okay, what now? The first few days felt like freefall. I lived on takeout and vending machine snacks, scrolling endlessly on my phone but not actually doing anything. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his smirk. Every time I opened them, I remembered her words. Maybe you're not the guy I thought you were. But slowly, painfully slowly, something started to shift. I remembered that before Sony, before all the titles and the dream job talk, I actually loved creating things. Not for recognition, not for promotions, but just because it lit me up inside. Back in college, I used to stay up all night designing little projects no one would ever see. Somewhere along the way, I traded that passion for validation. So one afternoon, sitting in that motel room, I opened my laptop, not to check emails or performance reviews, but to build something for myself. No pressure, no stolen credit, just me and my ideas. It felt good, almost like breathing again. I wasn't fixed. I was still angry, still hurt, still scared. But for the first time since everything blew up, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely broken. Over the next few weeks, I started making concrete decisions. No more Sony, no more toxic relationships, no more people dictating my worth. It was terrifying, but also kind of liberating. First, I cut ties completely with my ex. I blocked her number, unfollowed her on social media, and deleted anything that reminded me of that life. It hurt, more than I expected, but every time I felt that sting, I reminded myself, you're choosing you now. Next, I focused on work, but differently. I applied to smaller companies, startups where creativity and initiative actually mattered, places where I could contribute without being sabotaged. I even took freelance gigs, building projects on my own time. Slowly, my confidence started to creep back. And here's the thing, I learned to trust my instincts again. If something fell off, I listened. If someone tried to take credit, I documented it. I became more cautious, but also smarter about how I navigated professional relationships. The first interview I got after months of rejection was terrifying. I almost backed out. But I went. I showed up, told my story, honestly, and it turned out the hiring manager respected my resilience. I got the offer. Not Sony-level prestige, but a place where I felt valued. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a chance to rebuild. Piece by piece, I could see a path forward. As I settled into my new job, I couldn't help but think back on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the stolen ideas, the lies, it all hurt like hell, but it also taught me some hard truths about people and life. First, not everyone has your best interests at heart. I wish I could say otherwise, but sometimes the people around you, coworkers, friends, even partners, will prioritize themselves over you. And that's not always obvious until it's too late. Second, trust is fragile. I had blindly trusted my colleagues and my girlfriend, and it cost me dearly. But I also realized that being cautious doesn't mean being cold. It means protecting yourself while still staying open to meaningful connections. Most importantly, I learned that my worth isn't defined by anyone else. Not my boss, not my ex, not a colleague stealing my work. My worth is mine, and no one can take that away unless I let them. I started journaling, taking long walks, and reconnecting with passions I had abandoned. Slowly, anger and betrayal were replaced by clarity. I wasn't naive anymore, but I was stronger. I could face challenges without losing myself. And while I'll never forget what happened, I also don't want it to define me. It's a part of my story, but not the whole story. Rebuilding didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't just about work. I had to rethink relationships too. I realized that some people weren't meant to be in my life, and that was okay. Letting go of toxic ties, especially someone I once loved, was brutal, but necessary. I started connecting with people who genuinely supported me, even if it was just small things, a friend checking in, a mentor giving advice, someone celebrating a minor win with me. These were the people who reminded me that not everyone is out to sabotage you. At work, I kept boundaries clear. I documented everything, spoke up when necessary, and focused on my contributions rather than others' approval. Slowly, colleagues began to respect me, not because I demanded it, but because they saw my consistency and integrity. Outside of work, I focused on myself, hobbies, exercise, long walks in the park, and journaling. It helped me process the anger and betrayal without letting it consume me. For the first time in months, I felt a quiet sense of peace, like I was finally steering my own ship again. The lessons were harsh, but they were mine to keep. I understood that betrayal, while painful, can also be a catalyst for growth if you let it. By this point, I started seeing the bigger picture. All the betrayal, anger, and heartbreak had forced me to reassess my values and priorities. I realized I didn't want a job just for prestige anymore. I wanted one where I could make a real impact, feel challenged, and be treated with respect. I also learned to trust myself. Not blindly, not naively, but with a quiet confidence that I could handle challenges, spot red flags, and make decisions that were right for me. I stopped fearing failure because I had already survived a nightmare I never imagined I'd face. In relationships, I became more discerning. I learned to spot people who genuinely care versus those who are convenient or self-serving. It wasn't about shutting the world out. It was about protecting my peace and investing energy in connections that mattered. I still carry scars from that time. I still remember the look on my ex's face, the smirk of my former colleague, the cold indifference from HR. But those memories aren't just pain, they're lessons. They remind me to stay vigilant, to value integrity, and to never compromise my sense of self for anyone else. Most importantly, I learned that no matter how deep the betrayal, I can rebuild. Stronger, wiser, and more grounded. So here's my takeaway. Reddit. In case anyone reading this is going through something similar, betrayal sucks. It hurts. It shakes your confidence, and it can make you question everything you thought you knew about work, friends, or love. But it doesn't have to define you. First, trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Document, protect yourself, and don't ignore red flags. Second, focus on what you can control, your actions, your mindset, your choices. You can't stop someone from betraying you, but you can decide how you respond. Third, rebuild intentionally. Surround yourself with people who genuinely support you. Invest in yourself and pursue things that bring real fulfillment, not just recognition or validation. Finally, allow yourself to feel everything: anger, sadness, grief. But don't stay stuck there. Use it as fuel to grow stronger and wiser. Looking back, losing my job and my relationship felt like the end of the world. But now, I see it as a necessary reset, a brutal but honest wake-up call. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm creating a life that aligns with who I really am, and that's worth every scar. If you're in the middle of something like this, know this. It's painful, but you can come out the other side stronger. And when you do, you'll finally understand your own worth.